Hello guys, I'm Chris, and this is the story of the film Ford v Ferrari. The movie starts with Carroll Shelby at the Le Mans 1959 race, entering the pits as the crew hurries to refuel the car. However, as the car is hot, they accidentally spill some gasoline that sets both Shelby and the car aflame, but they're able to quickly put out the fire. Shelby tells the crew to hurry up with the refueling before rejoining the race. It then cuts to Shelby speaking with his doctor, who's informing him about the condition on his heart. One of the valves has been shot and he can no longer race, otherwise it's likely he would die. He has been forced into retirement. We then see a young boy, Peter, playing with cars while his father, Ken Miles, argues with a customer. The customer storms off in his car before we see Ken's wife, Molly, and the two share a moment together. In one of Ford's factories, many of the Ford Motor executives and higher-ups are gathering there. Vice President Lee Iacocca is talking with his colleagues before Henry Ford II orders Senior Executive Vice President Leo Bebby to shut it down. In the waking silence, he begins to give a speech to his employees about his father and asks them to ruminate on their walk home. If they can give him an idea, they get to keep their job. Otherwise, they can stay home. Back to Shelby, he's sleeping in his trailer before being woken up by Phil Remington, one of his engineers. The two talk about the other competitors in the race, although Shelby isn't worried before meeting with Dieter Voss, who owns Brusmo's Porsche, who is interested in hiring Ken but has some concerns. Shelby assures him that Ken isn't a difficult man at all, but an argument Ken has with one of the officials interrupts the conversation. The official at first cited Ken for not having a car with a trunk that can close properly per the rulebook before disqualifying the team when Ken insults him. Shelby steps in to mediate the argument and to deal with the official while Ken smashes the trunk to make it fit. Afterwards, he and Shelby get into a small argument which makes him throw a wrench at Shelby, which smashes into the windshield of the car. As the cars complete their warm-up lap for the race, the car in front of Ken breaks down, which causes him to fall behind the rest of the competitors, but he quickly catches up to Dan Gurney. He drives on the shoulder to outspeed him on the last stretch of the track and wins, inviting his son into the car in celebration. Shelby picks up the wrench that Ken threw at him and gets it framed in his office. At night, Ken carries his son up to his bed while Molly tells him that the IRS had visited the garage while he was gone. They've padlocked the garage. The family is in dire straits in terms of finances. In the morning, he throws away his trophies, which his son takes and hides, and gives up racing in exchange for a steady job. The heads of the Ford Motor Company listen to Iacocca present his idea, which is that Ford should go racing. Henry shuts down the presentation but hears him out on the racing idea and allows Iacocca to suggest a deal with Ferrari. He alongside a few of his colleagues travel to Italy to meet with Ferrari, encountering journalists, which he is initially put off by but allows it at the behest of Franco Gazzi, the right-hand man of Enzo Ferrari. After taking some photos, he shows the Ford businessmen how Ferrari creates their cars before introducing them to Enzo. Iacocca leads the merger, which would create two entities. Ford-Ferrari, which Ford will take majority share of and will be in control of all production. Then Ferrari-Ford, the racing team which Ferrari will take majority share of. Gazzi excuses himself from the meeting while Enzo asks for time to read through the documents. One of the journalists hurries to meet with Agnelli, the chairman of Fiat, to tell him about the Ford and Ferrari meeting. The chairman then offers a counter-deal. Ferrari will retain full control over their racing program alongside an $18 million deal. Enzo accepts the Fiat deal, rejecting the Ford offer while insulting both the Ford company and Henry Ford II. He never had any intention of partnering with Ford. The news of the Ferrari-Fiat partnership spreads quickly and Henry asks Iacocca to repeat Enzo's words. This lights a fire in him, who decides to go all in on the racing idea and to beat Ferrari at Le Mans. Shelby is closing a deal on a car with a customer when Iacocca arrives at Shelby American, who wants to rope him in and to get insight on the race. Shelby accepts the deal and drives to get Ken in, who's far more doubtful but concedes to see him give a speech at Cloverfield. At the Mustang showcase, Ken and Bebby meet and already it's a hostile relationship. The speech goes well with the crowd but Ken leaves early with his son. At night, Shelby persuades Ken to test the car they're building for Le Mans, the GT40. Although there are many issues with the car, Ken takes it for more test runs. We later see him in the morning with his wife questioning what he was doing last night, as she saw him talking with Shelby. When Ken is ambiguous with his answers, she begins to drive dangerously and asks him not to lie to her. He finally admits to her what he and Shelby are doing as well as about the job offer he's gotten, $200 per day with all expenses paid for. Ken and Shelby continue to improve and test the car, for better airflow and a better engine. While Ken tests out the GT40 with a better engine at Dearborn, Shelby meets with Bebby and Iacocca. The three talk about their driver lineup for Le Mans, which include Ken Miles, Phil Hill, Chris Amon, and Bruce McLaren. However, Ford has their concerns about Ken, as they believe he is too rough for their image. Shelby is unable to convince them to keep Ken as a driver who will be replaced by Bob Bondurant. Ken stays at the airport and listens to the radio about the 1965 Sierra Leonean Leon's Mans race. Molly joins him late into the night, switching the radio to music, and cheers her husband up with some dancing and some drinks. Without Ken, Ford loses the race and Ferrari wins again. But, in a meeting with Henry, Shelby is able to convince him to give the race another shot, as he believes they've frightened Enzo with their GT40. He goes back to Ken, apologizing before getting into a fistfight with him. Ken is rehired as a driver and works days and nights on the new GT40 Mk2. As he does a few test runs, Shelby has a conversation with Iacocca, who informs and warns him about Bebby, who is now the head of the racing division. Bebby has no intention of giving Ken a chance to race. The call ends early when Ken experiences brake fade on the track, crashing and exploding the car. Thankfully, he gets out of the accident with minor injuries. In the morning, when Henry and Bebby visit Shelby to see the new GT40, Shelby locks Bebby in his office before driving Henry around in the GT40, which ends with the man in tears. Shelby makes a deal with him: if Ken wins Daytona, he is allowed to race at Le Mans. If he loses, Ford gets full control over Shelby's company. At the 24-hour race at Daytona, Ken competes with Holman Moody, who is the second Ford team. When pitting, the Holman Moody car is able to get out faster, due to having a NASCAR crew. However, during the last stretches of the race, Shelby allows Ken to push the car, which gives him the win. The Le Mans race is finally here, with Ken Miles starting for Ford. For Ferrari, Scarfiotti and Bandini start. As soon as the countdown ends, the drivers run to their car. Ken is able to pull out of the start without a crash, but there's an issue: the car door won't close, which slows him down. He is forced to pit, but after Phil fixes the issue by hitting it with a mallet, he quickly gains ground and starts to set lap records. As Ken is swapping out with Denny Hume, there's a crash on the track that causes Scarfiotti to leave the race. Hours pass before they switch drivers again, with the race now taking place at night. They also swap out the tires for slicks, as it's about to rain. Ken fights with Porsche 58, which ends with it leaving the race after it runs Dan Gurney off. In an attempt to outrace Bandini, he once again experiences brake fade. He pits to change out the entire braking system, which Ferrari protests, but Shelby convinces the race officials that it is legal. Bandini pits as well, leaving first before Ken does, who has to pass him twice to catch up. Again, he challenges Bandini on a straight, which he wins on. He needs to lap him one more time to get into first place. One more challenge on a straight costs Bandini and Ferrari the race, as his engine suddenly fails, leaving Ken and the rest of Ford in the lead. This gives Bebby an idea to have all three Ford teams cross the finish line together, an idea that Henry agrees to, even though it would mean Ken would have to slow down. Shelby is against the idea but shares it with Ken and gives him the final call. When Ken jumps back into the GT40, he ignores Ford's orders and achieves a new lap record of 3 minutes and 30.6 seconds. A perfect lap. This enrages Bebby, who threatens to ban Shelby from the SCCA and the FIA. However, Ken finally relents and slows down to allow the other Ford teams to catch up and finish together on the final lap. This costs him the win, losing on a technicality. McLaren is declared the official winner due to having started further back. Shelby fights this decision, but Ken is at peace with it, saying next time. Some months pass after the Le Mans race, and while at the Riverside International Raceway, Ken Miles dies after a mechanical failure in the J car. Half a year passes before Shelby visits Molly and Peter, giving him the same wrench Ken threw at him. After Peter leaves to help his mother, Shelby sheds a few tears before driving away. It ends with a textual epilogue that reveals that Ford would continue its winning streak for 4 more years and that Ken Miles was posthumously inducted into the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America. Thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing if you enjoy this video. It promotes the channel and encourages us to produce more content.